Millions of Guatemalans take to the polls in the country's general elections. Tens of millions left without power on Father's Day in Argentina and Uruguay. 43 years after the Soweto uprising in South Africa, we take a look at what led to the student struggle. Hello and welcome to Telesur English. I am Estefania Bravo. This is from the South. Guatemalans took to the polls on Sunday as the country voted in general elections. More than 8 million people were registered to vote as uncertainty, allegations of corruption and fears of possible fraud abound. A total of 19 candidates are competing in the presidential race, which is expected to yield no outright winner and go to a runoff vote in August.
Esperemos en Dios que sí.
Let's hope to God that we have a change, that the candidates speak with sincerity, because we are giving our vote with sincerity and we expect that from them.
We have a lot of corruption, a lot of gangs, a lot of killing. Who is going to change it? It is very difficult, but I hope that one of these candidates can help these issues.
The three presidential frontrunners also cast their vote. Here's what they had to say.
I trust in God that I will be elected president. I am very optimistic. We have worked hard for that, and our goal is that if God wants it, I will be the first female president.
I hope that Guatemalans go cast their vote in peace. I hope and trust. I want to put a lot of trust in the Supreme Electoral Court. Mobilizations carried out by the Vamos, the UNE, and the FCN party have been terrible, giving away bags of food to the voters. It seems that they are invading Guatemala. This is the old political system. It is what Guatemalans are tired of.
Surrounded by heavy security, outgoing President Jimmy Morales cast his ballot earlier on Sunday. After the vote, Morales was asked about his party's alleged vote buying, to which he answered, if someone committed a crime, that person should be punished. He also admitted that one of the biggest challenges Guatemala faces currently is the high levels of chronic malnutrition and immigration. But Election Day did not go by without issues, as the Supreme Electoral Court suspended elections in the municipality of San Jorge in the department of Zacapa due to security concerns. Interior Minister Enrique Degenhardt announced that the electoral board in the municipality walked off their post after receiving death threats, while also assuring citizens that security forces have been deployed to guarantee the safety of voters. And to talk more about these elections, we are being joined live by Daniel Pereira. Daniel is a Guatemalan researcher and activist. He is also the coordinator of Paraíso Desigual, which aims to expose socioeconomic and political inequality issues. Daniel, thank you so much for your time for Telesur English.
Thank you very much for having me.
Daniel, first of all, there have been many reports of irregularities during today's vote, with some people even being arrested. What can you tell us about today's events?
Well, I myself just came back a couple hours ago from exercising my right to vote, and we've been hearing about various reports throughout the day. It's nothing that we haven't heard in previous elections. There's been several irregularities, some concerning previously marked ballots that were reported by several civilians in different locations. Like you mentioned and just previously, one of the municipalities had to cancel the election altogether because of threats to the volunteers who were presiding over the electoral process in that municipality. And I think more worrisome is what we've been hearing over the past couple of weeks regarding irregularities to do with the possibility of buying votes with public funds. And I think that's what you were referring to in the previous segment, that, you know, the president was questioned with regard to that. It's just been an overall very unusual and very atypical electoral process up to the last few days. And in that sense, it's anybody's guess how this is going to turn out. We're all just expecting to start hearing some of the results in the coming hours and obviously tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you that. Can you tell us when can we expect official results and if there is a clear frontrunner among the candidates?
I can honestly not say whether any of the forecasts are trustworthy. I will say the same thing about all the polls that we've been exposed to in the past few weeks. It's been almost a running joke because it seems that every candidate and every political party has put out their own polls demonstrating that their own candidate was maybe not the front runner, because I think there's a consensus that the front runner is in fact Sandra Torres. That has been the expected outcome for the first round. As you know, we have most likely going to have a second round because we've always had two rounds in the democratic era. A candidate needs 50% plus one in order to win in the first round, and that's unlikely to happen, even though Sandra Torres is clearly the front runner. Now, the big question is who is going to be the runner-up, who's going to go up against her in the second round. And that is, like I said, it's a toss-up. There are many possible contenders, and the information has been so varied, and the trust, not only in public institutions, but even in polls themselves and in journalistic outlets, has been really eroded over the last few years. And I think most Guatemalans are just anxious to start hearing the official tally. And stop reading social media, stop reading newspapers, because people just want to know the official result. As to when we can expect that, I would say throughout the evening, certainly by the morning.
Yeah. Daniel, can you talk to us about some of the biggest issues voters hope to see fixed in Guatemala going forward?
That's a great question. And I think, the answer used to be very simple. We used to be very much concerned about the fact that Guatemala has consistently been one of the poorest, to be more precise, one of the most highly unequal societies in the region, even though it has the largest economy in Central America. The fact that we have by almost a double the highest rate of infant chronic malnutrition in the Americas is indicative of the type of society in which we're living and the kind of social issues that people care about. It's very telling that the CICIG, the International Commission Against Impunity, started to be perceived not only as a necessary mechanism. I'm referring to broad swaths of the Guatemalan population, started perceiving this commission as not only important for regaining trust, public trust in the institutions of the state, but also as a necessary prerequisite to start to ameliorate some of those structural issues that I was referring to: poverty, high rates of violence, homicidal violence, high rates of infant chronic malnutrition, high rates of vulnerability to natural phenomena. You might remember that a year ago we had a tragedy on the skirts of the Fuego volcano, and it's consistently throughout our history those poorer populations that are exposed to natural phenomena. So I think most of this population wants to see a continuity of the anti-corruption struggle within the public institutions in order to start to tackle those more fundamental, most long-term issues.
Daniel, we thank you so much for your time for Telesur English.
Thank you very much for having me.
We have been speaking with Daniel Pereira on Guatemala's general elections. And moving on, Mexican authorities detained 791 migrants on Saturday in the state of Veracruz. The migrants were found inside 4 parked trucks in what was one of the largest raids against illegal immigration in recent months. The mass detention comes less than 10 days after Mexico started to step up its efforts to curb illegal immigration in its territory in order to avoid the threat of tariffs by U.S. President Donald Trump. According to the controversial agreement signed on June 7th, Mexico had 45 days to make palpable progress in reducing the number of people seeking to enter the U.S. after fleeing poverty and violence in their home countries. In El Salvador, environmental activists have condemned the industry. As inhabitants of rural areas have been exposed to herbicides, thousands are suffering from chronic kidney disease.
Rosalia Lopez has lived near sugarcane plantations all her life. Her family's form of sustenance has been the agricultural work, that the sugarcane industry offers locals. The use of poison in crops caused 2 of her children to suffer from chronic kidney disease, while another passed away due to kidney failure.
They came drenched in that poison that they used to spray. So I said to them, "Why are you like this all wet?" They used to tell me that it was the poison and that they came here to wash it off.
Oscar is one of Rosalia's sons. He has been on dialysis for 4 years. He tells us how he acquired chronic kidney disease after working 12 years fumigating the fields.
I felt a great pain in my body. I would feel tired while I was fumigating and couldn't stand doing the work anymore. So they took me to the health facility and they did tests and I found out my kidneys were damaged.
Environmental movements promote agroecology as a working alternative for inhabitants of rural communities to develop healthy food markets and workshops for the use of native seeds, which contribute to the protection of the environment.
We continue using fossil fuels, generating greenhouse gases. We continue to use a large amount of poison that go in our food and then end up damaging our kidneys, among other things. We continue destroying forests, building great infrastructure. Humanity is not going to be able to continue going like this.
Imports of insecticides, herbicides, and fungicides into the country surpasses 175,000 tons a year, which leaves transnational corporations with millions in profits at the cost of the lives and health of small farmers.
A massive power outage on Sunday left tens of millions in Argentina and Uruguay in the dark. The blackout occurred early on Sunday, affecting everything from public transportation to running water and telecommunications. Parts of Paraguay and Brazil were also left without power. Work is being done to restore power as electricity is reportedly slowly returning to the region. An investigation is underway to find the cause of the blackout.
What we know at this moment is that at 7:07 in the morning, local time, a failure occurred in the coastal grid. Failures that occur with frequency in the Argentine system as well as any other country's system. That failure is not abnormal or extraordinary. What's abnormal or extraordinary and shouldn't happen is the following chain of events that cause the total cutoff.
On Friday, Panamanian newspaper Panam Post published an in-depth investigation accusing envoys of Venezuelan lawmaker and self-proclaimed interim president Juan Guaido of stealing funds destined for Venezuelan deserters living in the city of Cúcuta, Colombia. The Panam Post investigation reveals that Juan Guaido's special envoys Kevin Rojas and Rosana Barrera were put in charge of funds destined to support deserters of the Venezuelan armed forces on February 24th. As such, they were working with the Colombian government and the UN Human Rights Council to pay for 7 hotels. But while the special envoys claimed to be paying for all 7 hotels and were receiving funds from Guaido to cover those costs, in reality, they were only responsible for the payment of 2 hotels and were embezzling the rest of the funds. On top of this, Barrera and Rojas claimed to be caring for nearly 1,500 deserters, but Colombian intelligence puts the numbers at about 700. Another allegation leveled against Guaido's envoys is that they allegedly let over half of the food items sent to Cúcuta's humanitarian aid go bad, and were planning on burning it to cover up their mismanagement. Coming up after the break, the head of Libya's Government of National Accord announces elections to be held before the end of the year. Stay with us. Welcome back. The World Health Organization in Uganda has started to vaccinate anyone who may have come into contact with 2 people who died from Ebola last week. 3 cases have been recorded so far in Uganda, all from people who had arrived from the Democratic Republic of Congo. More than 2,000 patients have been diagnosed with the virus in the DRC and more than 1,000 deaths so far. The cases in Uganda are time the virus crossed an international border since the epidemic started. On Friday, a WHO panel decided not to declare an international emergency over the outbreak, saying such a declaration could cause economic harm.
They don't seem to be scared. They are willing to take up the vaccine. It is a harmless vaccine. It's given the same way we give all the other vaccines. So there shouldn't be anything unusual. And they understand it's for their benefit so that they are able to stay healthy and save their lives.
The head of Libya's government of national accord has announced a new political initiative and elections to be held before the end of the year in a bid to end the crisis in the country. This announcement comes as fighting between General Khalifa Haftar's forces and the GNA intensified recently, resulting in a standstill on the southern outskirts of Tripoli.
Our initiative is summarized in the following points. First, to hold a Libyan forum in coordination with the UN mission from all the regions who have political and social influence, who advocate for a peaceful and democratic solution. We've decided during this forum what will be the future roadmap of this period and create the suitable constitutional law to hold presidential and parliamentary elections before the end of 2019.
Sudan's former president Omar al-Bashir has been taken to the prosecutor's office for questioning over corruption charges. Prosecutors say a large amount of foreign currency was found inside grain sacks at Bashir's home after he was ousted. He is also wanted by the International Criminal Court under accusations of being behind numerous war crimes and crimes against humanity in the Darfur region. This is his first public appearance since he was overthrown in April.
The principal of the prosecutor's office were presented to the accused, former President Omar Hassan, Ahmed al-Bashir, and the charge was laid under Articles 5 and 9 regarding the possession of foreign money, as well as Article 6 regarding illegally acquired resources.
On Sunday, South Africans commemorate what is famously known as the Soweto uprising. On the 16th of June, 1976, thousands of students in the black township of Soweto took part in a mass demonstration against the government's decision to introduce Afrikaans as the official language of instruction in school, as Afrikaans was seen as the language of the oppressor. We tracked down some of the leaders who organized the 1976 demonstration. Mpo Lakaji reports from Soweto.
One Sunday in the winter of 1976, student leaders gathered at this community hall in Soweto. They discussed a controversial announcement that had been made by the Department of Bantu Education. Afrikaans would be the official language of instruction in black schools.
The minister that really pushed that a concept or pushed that legislation for implementation was Minister M.C. Botha.
This meant school subjects like mathematics, geography and history would now have to be taught in Afrikaans. That language had negative connotations at schools like Orlando High in Soweto.
Black people had 3 languages to study. It was your mother tongue, it was English, and then it was the language of the oppressor, which is Afrikaans.
When Afrikaans was now imposed in all our schools, I was one of those who felt frustrated. You know, you could see the doors of learning shutting in front of your eyes to say, how am I going to be taught in Afrikaans that I don't even know? I'm struggling with the language, right? It is not my mother tongue, you know, it's not even my second language.
Students then reached out to the authorities in an attempt to voice their concerns.
That's when I took the initiative, therefore, to say, what about communicating, you know, with the then Minister of Bantu Education to say, can you explain, you know, what are you trying to achieve? And of course, one expected the Minister of Bantu Education, first of all, to look at the letter itself, you know, correct the grammar, then give me a call and say, hey, let's sit down and explain what we are happening, or what was happening at that time. But he decides to send the police to come and arrest me.
After Enos Ngujane was picked up from Naledi High by the police, his schoolmates became extremely angry. In the days that followed, students took a decision to demonstrate on these streets of Soweto. At that stage, they were fighting not only against Afrikaans, they wanted racial segregation to be completely abolished. On the 16th of June 1976, crowds of learners from different schools gathered and snaked through Soweto, swelling to thousands. But in no time, the police were at the scene and ordered the marchers to disperse. The students were relentless.
They then released dogs. The only defense against those police dogs was stones. So students used stones to kill the dogs. And a dog that died and made the police to start even wanting to use live bullets.
In the ensuing chaos, the police opened fire, and 13-year-old Hector Peterson was among the first children to be gunned down. The image was published around the world. The international community began to pressurize the apartheid government to abandon its racist policies. Today, South Africa is a free country, and a monument has been built to honor the hundreds of students who died in 1976. But there's no doubt it was that demonstration that became a turning point in the fight against apartheid. Mpolagaje, Telesu, Soweto.
Coming up after the break, the Iranian president says his country is slacking back compliance with the 2015 nuclear deal. Stay with us. Welcome back. The Iranian president says his country will continue scaling back compliance of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, also known as the Iran nuclear deal, unless other signatories show positive signals. Speaking at a summit of Asian leaders in Tajikistan, President Hassan Rouhani said his country has made a decision to terminate the implementation of some of its obligations to the deal, adding that Iran cannot unilaterally comply with the agreement. Meanwhile, speaking at the same summit in Tajikistan, Russian President Vladimir Putin says Moscow would adhere to the nuclear agreement and urge other signatories to follow suit.
Everyone is concerned about the state of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action to Iran's nuclear program. The US leaving this agreement has significantly unraveled its execution and has had a negative impact on the Non-Proliferation Treaty. We believe that the only sensible decision is for all deal participants to honour their commitments. This is what Russia intends to do.
And we continue with our coverage of the 2019 Cricket World Cup. India has continued their World Cup dominance with an 89 runs victory over rivals Pakistan at Old Trafford. Pakistan suffered a collapse as they lost 4 wickets for just 12 runs, which took the game away from them. And when the rains interrupted the play, India was on top as Pakistan needed another 136 off 30 balls, which was impossible. This win means that India maintains its undefeated run as they have 7 points from 4 matches. On the other hand, Pakistan are in trouble and need to win all their matches to have any hopes of qualifying for the semifinals. An aircraft built by South African teenagers being flown from Cape Town to Cairo has successfully made its first stop in Namibia. It will take 6 weeks to cover the 12,000-kilometer trip to Egypt, which stops in Uganda, Rwanda, Zambia, and Botswana. The 4-seater was assembled by a group of 20 students from vastly different backgrounds. It was built in 3 weeks from a kit made by South African aircraft manufacturer, the Airplane Factory.
And tag people you know who may want to help.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For FtS English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.